Back with a Fox News alert. The Las Vegas shooter might have had help carrying out the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history.
You know, police also believe that Stephen Paddock had a plan to escape. Yeah, he wanted to survive, perhaps, after gunning down innocent country music fans at the Las Vegas Strip. And bullet holes in nearby jet fuel tanks could suggest that Paddock wanted to cause an explosion and incinerate people, killing even more.
Now his girlfriend is back on American soil, telling investigators she had no idea about the attack.
Do you buy it? Let's go down to Steve with the town hall.
All right, Brian and Aisley, thank you. The massacre in Vegas is renewing the debate about gun control all across the country. Let's bring in our town hall panel to weigh in on this. Good morning, everybody. One of the things we discovered as they have gone through the room is apparently he was not firing with an automatic weapon. As it turns out, he had semi-automatic weapons he had bought something online or through a retailer called a bump stock. Can I see the hands? Who has ever heard of a bump stock before this week? Okay, so it is apparently, and I was reading about it, it's something that was passed a while back, was okayed because it allowed people with disabilities to then do recreational shooting. Who thinks it's time to have the debate in this country about changing laws regarding things like bump stocks? All right, let's start with you, Tiffany. Why?
You know, this has personally affected me, Steve, where my sister-in-law was at that concert. And so
Your sister-in-law was?
My sister-in-law was at that concert, and we had to wait, just like so many other families, wondering whether she was dead or alive. And thank God she turned out to be safe and got to safety as bullets were flying all around her. But it is unconscionable that a private citizen can amass this type of arsenal legally. There comes a time when what is legal...
Do you have a problem with the number of guns?
Yes, I have a problem with the number of guns, that it did not set off any red flags, and that that he did so all legally. Okay. And there comes a time, Steve, when what is legal is no longer moral.
All right. Tammy, let's go to you in the back row. There's an item in the New York Times today that says some Republican senators and, in fact, congressmen as well, are open to talking about these particular bum stocks. Maybe it's time to get rid of them.
That we would expect that. And look, it's been an extraordinary week for all of us. America is, it's been difficult. And yet this is the conversation that has to be had in some fashion. There is an automatic reaction to dealing with the issue of guns or an element like a bump stock. It's clear. We understand why. This is awful. Right. At the same time, there's also a story this week out of Las Vegas Journal-Review about a mind-altering drug that the shooter, the maniac, was just prescribed in June.
Just got Valium.
An anti-anxiety drug. It's of a class now that we recognize, of course, like with alcohol or other drugs, can impact the issue of aggression and violence. What the problem when we have that discussion about firearms, it's the presumption that it's the solution, when in fact we're never dealing with the human condition and the nature of the person who is pulling that trigger, and that's got to be. We've got to enter into that conversation.
Rachel, let's go to you right there, right now. You also say we got to talk about mental health. You know, guns are one thing, but let's talk about mental health as well.
That's right. Now, it may not relate to this particular case, but after Newtown, there were lots of parents that came forward and said, hey, I have a kid who is mentally unstable. I'm actually afraid to be in the home with this kid. I think he's going to kill me or himself or others. And they couldn't take their kids to a place. There were not the laws or the resources available to help them. I mean, that's a serious problem. And I know that they've been trying to deal with that in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Congress. But I think that Tammy's right. A lot of times, these kind of solutions, there's no room for it because gun control and that whole conversation takes all the airspace.
Front row right here. Professor, what do you make of all this?
You know, I think that there's a middle ground here. I think we do need to have a discussion, but I think part of the discussion we never have involves the tech industry. We have a tech industry that can take this out of the legal realm and help us solve some of these problems via technology. So I would put up, we've had growing areas in terms of smart guns that are able to cut down. The problem is, after something like this, a smart gun wouldn't have stopped this shooter. And to Tammy's point, There are mental health issues, but you can use technology to cut down. I mean, you look at the number of shootings we've had and the killings and the people who've been wounded in gun violence. We can cut that number back through things like the use of technology, and that's a challenge the government should fund and put to the technology community. Help us solve this problem.
Okay. Well, yesterday when he was on the ground in Las Vegas, the President of the United States was asked about, is now the time to have the dialogue about gun control? And the President said no. However, Hillary Clinton, in a podcast, was talking about it and says Republicans are complicit in what happened in Vegas.
It is a sign of the deep dysfunction of this government and this Republican Party that has been taken over by extreme elements to the point that they are doing whatever they're told to do.
Do you feel like they're complicit, the GOP, the NRA, in the gun epidemic we're seeing in America?
Of course they are. Of course they are.
Janine Borelli?
Yeah, Steve, I think Hillary Clinton's comments, early on, she came out immediately after this happened, tweeting and criticizing the NRA. I find her comments outrageous and disgusting. She wasn't even talking about the individuals, the victims who were harmed, who were killed. And listen, I don't recall her running on gun control when she was running for office. And not only that, under former President Obama, where was the outrage for gun control then? They could have moved in and done something.
Do you see this as an opportunity by some on the political left to grab guns?
Absolutely. It's a total gun grab. And listen, my heart, my thoughts and prayers with all of the victims, anyone that is affected by this, your family as well. But listen, I see this as any time that something like this happens, that the left comes out and tries to push their gun grab agenda, and it's the wrong agenda.
All right. Rebecca Grant?
Well, President Trump is right. This is a week to mourn and to reflect, and we all need to keep that in mind. Going forward, you know, personally, I cannot understand why he had those guns. I have no use for some of that stuff. But it's going to take.
Do you have a problem with the number of guns he had?
Oh, sure, I do. Doesn't everyone have a problem with that? But we can't look to that as the only answer. If it's not guns, maybe it'll be drones in the future.
All right.
We see France with strict laws, and it hasn't helped them.
Kelly McCann, welcome back. We haven't seen you in a while. Marine vet, what is your perspective on this?
I think that there's always buzzwords surrounding this whole issue. You know, I mean, if it wasn't bump stocks, it'd be bipods. If it wasn't bipods, it'd be bayonet lugs. If it wasn't bayonet lugs, it'd be flash hiders. This is an emotional issue, right? And there's something that has got to be done, obviously. But it's seminal to our rights. And if we tinker with Second Amendment rights, and I'm not shilling for anybody or anything, but if we start tinkering with rights, where does it stop? I mean, our First Amendment rights just caused some deaths not too long ago.
Sure.
Do we tinker with that one? And who tinkers? And why should they get to do it?
Right. Dr. Porcher, we're going to end with you right now. You look at the number of gun laws in the country, and then you look at what's happening, for instance, in Chicago. They've got some of the most restrictive gun laws in the country, and yet it doesn't seem to be making a dent in the killing that's going on out there.
Absolutely. There's been no empirical data that's supported a precipitous drop in crime in relation to gun control. When we look at countries like England and Germany, for that matter, they've tried it and it hasn't worked. Let's take in consideration the knife-wielding suspect on a London bridge.
Right.
Had there been a gun owner, a licensed gun owner on that bridge, that attack would have been thwarted. When we look at what happened in Tennessee just 2 weeks ago, there was a licensed gun owner that was able to counter and neutralize that suspect in that church.
Before we go, can I see the hands? Does anybody know of one gun law they could write that would have prevented what happened on Sunday night? Okay, we're going to end it right there then. All right.